Welcome to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness, the podcast for hormone and functional medicine providers who want a thriving, predictably profitable practice and maybe a little less stress along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Jody Layne, and I've worked with lots of clinics in marketing, sales, and business development, and I have seen what works and what doesn't. And here's what I believe. Hormone and wellness care should be available to everyone who wants it. And while providers know the medicine, many struggle with the business side of their cash practice. And that's where I come in. See, this podcast is here to share real strategies, real stories, things you can implement in your practice right away. So I am so glad you're here. Come on, let's go. Today's conversation is one I think is going to hit a nerve for a lot of you out there listening, because if you're a provider, you've probably done everything right. You went to school, you built a career, you're earning a good income. But if you still feel stuck, like you don't have as much freedom as you thought you would, well, that is exactly what we're going to dive into today. I am joined by Dr. Christopher Liu, who is a physician, an investor, and the host of the wildly popular Financial Freedom podcast. And he made a very unconventional decision early on in his career to step away from traditional medicine and build true financial independence. And what I love about this conversation is that we're not just talking about money, we're talking about options. We're talking about gaining control, and we're talking about what it actually takes to build a life where work is optional, not mandatory. So if you've ever felt like you're working harder than you expected to, or you're wondering if there's another way to build your career and your income, this episode is going to open your eyes to things that I personally have never thought about before. All right, let's go dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Christopher Liu to the show. He is a physician, he's an investor, and he's the host of the Financial Freedom podcast, where he helps physicians think differently about money, wealth building, and creating true optionality in their careers. What I love about his message, and truth be told, I have been a guest on his podcast as well, is that he's not just about earning more, he's about building freedom, making intentional choices, and not feeling trapped by the career you've worked so hard to build. So, Dr. Liu, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here today. Let's go ahead and dive in. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to be the host of this amazing podcast.
Yeah, and thanks again for having me on the podcast. I've started to do more guest appearances because these show up in ChatGPT a lot, and so
Excellent
I
point.
started. Yeah, I started out my medical career, following the tried and true path of, go to school, get a degree, get good grades, all of the traditional industrial advice, and I started to see a lot of changes, especially after 2000 with the advent of the internet, and especially after 2000 up to now, we've seen massive changes, disruption in our society. We talk about those later. I went to medical school, Baylor, Rice, was an MD, PhD, and my original intention was to just be a practicing doctor. So I did that and got out of medical school, matched into orthopedic surgery residency, and I just remember the first day I went into orientation at residency, and I knew my heart wasn't in it. I knew it was going to be a battle, but I stuck with it for a couple years. But I really did not. I enjoyed being a doctor, and I enjoyed being around smart and successful individuals, but I did not enjoy working for the corporate industrial medical system. I
Hmm.
know that's the thing that's a lot of, I mean, I'm probably 100% sure 99% of people are not happy with. So I took a leap of faith. This was in 2008 when the financial crisis hit, the day that Lehman Brothers, it was all over the news, filed for bankruptcy. I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I was like, I'm not going to work for corporate America anymore. I turned my keys, badge, and pager, and I set out on to become an entrepreneur to gain my time, my income, my freedom, and the ability to choose to work with whom and what I wanted to work on. So I spent the next 8 years investing in severely undervalued real estate and became a multimillionaire in 2016. I was 38 years old at the time. And
Congratulations.
yeah. that's kind of the long story. I then spent a year just contemplating doing different things, traveling, meeting entrepreneurs. And what really hit me was I was meeting these 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs living abroad in South America and Southeast Asia. And I was fascinated. How could they be doing this, living a lifestyle that most of us would dream about? So I networked with them. I came back to the States. I did a lot of consulting jobs, high paying, but very high stress, working for healthcare. And then 4 years in, the pandemic hit and basically everything shut down. Everything it was like in and I didn't know what was gonna happen. So I started, interviewing people and just guests, and I launched my financial freedom podcast from my bedroom closet in March of 2020, which has since now grown into a lucrative six-figure media brand where we interview hosts and guests such as yourself. And I've since transitioned from trading my time and money into building this media brand, speaking engagements, book endorsements, and sponsorships, affiliates. So that's me in a nutshell, and that's where I am today.
That is one big nutshell. What a great story. When I was listening to you, I was thinking about a lot of the practitioners that I work with in the hormone space, that they have the same story, different outcome. So went into traditional medicine, followed all the steps you're told to take, residency, become an attending, start working into the corporate hospital environment, and they're just frustrated with the traditional handcuffs that they have, and they can't treat their patients the way they want to, so they leave and they go get different kind of freedom by getting into wellness and cash pay practices. But so I feel like your story resonates in a lot of ways. What would you say the definition for you is financial freedom? Because that could be a buzzword, but I bet it means more than just a buzz thing for you.
Yeah, I break it down into 4 components of freedom, and basically the financial part is basically you have income covering your ability to cover your expenses, your debt liabilities, and you're able to save and invest without trading your time for money,
Mm.
without a job. So that can be through a business, could be through investments, stocks, real estate, could be royalties, inheritance. So that's the definition of financial freedom. So in that component, you've got where you sever the tie between your time and your incomes. Basically, you have your freedom, you have your finances set, you don't need to go work for somebody. So that's my definition. There's other levels of financial freedom. So, for example, there's financial independence, which is a precursor to financial freedom, where it's basically your work optional. You go to your
Mm.
practice or your job, you may hate it, you may enjoy it, but it's just optional. You could leave at any time and you'd still be okay. So that's kind of financial independence and true like financial freedom, where you just basically you can basically do whatever you want. And that's the next level. So that's financial freedom in a nutshell.
I feel like that is the new definition of retirement. Growing up, you were taught do X, Y, Z so that when you get to 62 or 65, you can retire. But so many of us now do things that we really enjoy. We don't want to stop working, but retirement is not having to work. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, and, again, it's, so there's a lot, and I used to really think about I used to advertise myself as retired, and I really, you contemplate now, and I didn't really like that word because it kind of made me feel dead inside.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people choose to use that word retirement, and, it could be, again, there's so many different definitions from retirement. It could be, the FIRE movement as well. There's but I changed from retirement to work optional because I like that, is like, because we all have to have a purpose and we all have to have a drive and a need to contribute.
I'm going to steal that. When people, because my dad's always asking me about retirement. I'm going to say, Dad, I'm not retiring. I'm going work optional. I love that. So you obviously, have a lot of connection to the medical space and, as a physician yourself, and I'm sure you work with other physicians. Why do you think high paid physicians still feel trapped or stuck in what they're doing?
I mean, that's a loaded questions, but I think, it's a lot of it. I mean, you can break it down into several components. So, I mean, the first one is debt. A lot of them,
Mm.
they accumulated, they went to like very expensive undergraduates and, very expensive medical schools, graduated with, I've heard like 700,000, $800,000 in student loan debt. So they're trapped to that. And on top of that, they don't have time freedom. They
Mhm.
may get a high paying salary, but they're trapped. They may want to do other things. They don't have location freedom. The hospital tells them, and the insurance companies tell them where they have to work. And then on top of that, they don't have any autonomy because their employers and hospitals and insurance are telling them how much they can get paid. So it's almost like you have to work harder and harder for less and less. So
Yeah.
that's one reason. Second reason is, society, we have these conceptions we alluded to, go to school, work hard, get good grades, get a job. And a lot of these days in 2026, that advice does not work for the majority of people. I'm even hearing people where they're saying that college is now is optional, and
Mhm.
for some people, it may be a waste of time and money. So they've been trapped. They've been conditioned to believe a certain way, and they did everything correctly, and then they get to this point. It's like, what did I work for? What did I sacrifice, these 2 decades for, just to make a insurance company or a hospital more wealthier? So that's the second thing. Third thing is just, spousal pressure from parents. Society is that you are a doctor. You have to sacrifice yourself. You have to sacrifice your well-being. So that type of then the next other reason why a lot of doctors feel trapped is because of expenses. They look at their colleagues and they call them the high income, not yet wealthy, or the Henrys, or even people just making a significant income and just spending it and not saving or investing it. So they get trapped by this perpetual rat race and comparison trap. So those are some of the reasons. I mean, there's others, but those are
Yeah.
kind of the general overview of why luck trapped.
Wow, you make so many good points. I mean, I resonated with a lot of the things that you said and heard stories from other providers where I could sort of feel those things happening in the background. What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes you see physicians make early on in their career that lend themselves to these things being the outcome?
Well, one thing is, one of the biggest mistakes is just not saving and not investing right away. A lot of med students in med school, they think, oh, I got these student loans. I gotta wait till I get my attending job and pay off my student loans before I can start investing. By that time, you're 15 years behind. And if you have $100,000 saved, and if it's growing and compounding annually over 15 years, that can turn into a significant amount. So the one thing is just not saving thing early. I started when I was 24. Some of my real good friend and mentor, he was starting in it when he was 14 and 15, starting to invest in stocks and save stocks. So, by the time he was in his early 20s, he had a couple $100,000 in investments. So that's the first thing. Second thing is overspending. So again, this kind of this stereotype of the doctor lifestyle. So they have to, you gotta buy a fancy car, these high expenses, expensive homes, vacations, these types of things, material consumption, and this perpetual need to prove that you are a doctor. So the rat race. That's the second thing. Third thing is falling for scams and
Mm.
just hyper like insurance things that because physicians are targets, so um, they get uh, they get targeted by just very investments that are quite frankly scams. So those are three things. And I mean, we can talk about ways of mitigating and protecting yourself against these types of mistakes.
Before we do that, let's flip the switch here because I would imagine a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are way beyond 14, 24, even 30. They're now maybe they're closer to their working optional age. What can they do? What are some of the things that they can do to change the trajectory of their financial freedom?
In terms of, are we talking like 30, like, mid-30s, late 40s, or?
let's go for the 40s. Let's go for the people that are in their 40s because that, obviously a lot of people make the mistake of not really paying attention to their finances when they're younger, always thinking that
Mhm.
money's going to be there. And everybody has, great advice about how you can do fix that when you're young. But then what about those of us that are older?
Well, I mean, if like I work with some older clients as well, and it's never too late. I mean, even your 30s or 40s, you're still far away from 65. So, the first thing is, again, cut back on your expenses. So cut back on just, start saving more and spend less than you earn and then invest the difference. So that's the first thing you can and do. And the easiest way is to start investing in start dollar cost averaging into the S&P, like into index funds. So basically, it could be the S&P, the Dow Jones, or the Nasdaq. Those three over time will in general will produce adequate returns. Now there are other ways to grow and compound your money, but the safest and easiest way are those three. And you want to save at least 20% of your earned income. So that's kind of because kind of the traditional outlets, they recommend 10%, but if you save 20%, you're saving 20% more in investing that. So that'll compound and grow. Third thing is develop multiple streams of income apart from your job. So if you're a single W-2 employed doctor, they start diversifying. There's other ways of diversifying your income streams. It could be a 1099. A lot of doctors are locums. A lot of doctors are publishing and writing books. They're doing consulting. They're speaking engagements. These can all be on the side. They don't have to replace your clinical income, but they can add and supplement. It could be helpful to save that as well. So diversify your income stream. So I've helped a number of doctors do that. Fourth thing is reduce your tax liability. So again, your W-2 is not shielded from the high tax brackets as, for example, business owners or 1099, these types of income. So understand that W-2, you are at the highest risk of paying the most taxes. So reduce your tax liability. That could be either through a strategic tax advisor, a CPA. These are very general, broad strokes. A lot of if you own a business, these that can also be tax deductible. So look into those as well.
Wow, that's some very concrete advice that you have just given. I want to hone in on one of the things because in the wellness space, I am seeing more and more providers from physician's assistants, nurse practitioners to medical doctors that are offering these additional online courses, writing a book, maybe starting a podcast. What's some advice you can give to the listeners about doing those things and how do you do it? I mean, obviously, your full-time attention is probably going to be in your practice. How do you do this? Do you hire someone to help you out so that you can do it quicker? What do we do?
I would first thing to set expectations is these types of income streams where you're, for example, a podcast or a book. I want to It's helpful to view these things as something as a hobby or that you start on
Mm.
the side, which is what I did with my podcast. I wasn't expecting it to could turn into a six-figure revenue generating business, but start it with the expectation that this is something that's going to help you build your brand in the next few years. So that's the first thing. But especially for the medical community, your time is your most precious asset. So there's a lot of ways to leverage your income. You can pay a virtual assistant. There's an editor. There's a lot of freelancers that can help you either launch, write. They can help you with all different aspects. So for a podcast, different entities that can help you launch it, can edit it, publish, release, social media. But find somebody that is good and capable, and at a decent, nothing outrageous, because a lot of agencies, they will charge a lot but they not deliver a lot. So it's you are able to find services at significant cost savings of good quality. So, if you're listening to this, I have references as well, but you, there's, I would say, hire help. Then that way you can leverage your time and then start to branch out.
I love that you said consider it a hobby because it will be something that these people will be doing on the side. Like you'll work an 8 hour day, 5 days a week, and then, or maybe more. And then if you also have to do a podcast and you feel like it's a chore, you're not going to be consistent. And with everything you're discussing, it's a long game. It's not going to bring instant revenue. So I love that advice to do it as a hobby. So you've clearly done a lot of right things, right? In your career, you've made a lot of right choices. Is there anything that you did along the way that wasn't a right choice that you kind of regret or you could teach a little lesson on?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, there's so many, like,
No, you're
I had
perfect.
to so, I mean, some of the things I regret is to because at that time in my framework, just listening to certain people's advice, and so, I'll give you a an example is, I was my final year of medical school, and I go to my dean, and, we have to talk about, what are your plans after medical school, what residencies, etcetera. And, for him, I told him I was more interested in entrepreneurship and in business, and his standard advice that he has to give to all 200 of the classes: go get into residency, finish fellowship, get board certified, practice for a number of years, and then you can branch out. And that was his standard advice. And obviously, that's his job, is to kind of provide sound guidance, talking about entrepreneurship to med students. So, understand where people are coming from when you go to people with advice, especially when it comes on when you're stepping out against the grain. A lot of people did not understand what I was doing back in 2008. And for a long time, I had to fight so many people just mentally. I just had to, just kind of separate, just because we did not see eye to eye, and we just could not, they just did not understand, where I was coming from. So that's one of the biggest thing, is really understand who you're taking advice from. What are their motives? Parents, they mean well, but sometimes they just cannot see where you want to be. So that's the first thing. Take advice from people that are doing things that you want to be doing. That, for example, if you want to be a billionaire, go to, talk to people that are billionaires or on their way to. You don't want to be talking to your friends that are just kind of, they want to pull you down or see you fail. So that's one thing. The second thing is just understand the types investments and the risk that comes with it. So that can be either in real estate. I mean, these days, if I can tell you all the stories around real estate, all the stories around stocks, that would kind of scare people away. But just understand your risk tolerance. As you're younger, you can take a little bit more risk, and as you're older, you have to be a little bit less risk and take less risk. So those are some of the things. And again, like a lot of places, you can get a lot of the information, the services. A lot of these you can get for significantly less than what people are charging. So understand what people are charging, and understand what the market is. And because, for example, like, I just recently talked to an editor, and she's charging $10,000 for her service, when I have my own personal editor, and AI can do it now for 1,000. Understand, kind of, shop around, talk to people. So those are kind of the 3 biggest mistakes that I made.
Got it. Those very specific and very clear. Let's go back to something else that you said. You mentioned that you started your podcast as a hobby and now it's a six-figure business.
Yeah.
Selfishly, and because I hear a lot of other providers wanting to talk about, starting a podcast. What are some of the things that you did to make your podcast financially successful?
Oh, so one thing, that's so, I really, love this question, because, and I spoke to it at Podfest that you were there. And one of the things is, I, again, I viewed it as a hobby, but I wanted to monetize it from day one. And the reason why I wanted to monetize it from day one, because, there's a couple reasons. The first reason was, if I monetize it as fast as I could, just that first dollar, it would give me momentum. It would give me extra mental edge and confidence, that be like, okay, I'm on the right path. Whereas, if I'm languishing, and, it's not monetized for the next year or two, so that's the one thing I set out. I was like, it's going to be a hobby. It's a side hobby, but I want to make some extra income. So what I first did was, I just started selling my cert. The easiest way is you sell 15-minute, 30-minute, an hour consulting coaching service with you. That's the easiest way to start monetizing. You just say at the end or middle, beginning of the show, you say, if you enjoy this content or this conversation, I offer services in XYZ, book a call in the show notes. That's the fastest way you can start to monetize. So just one-on-one trading your time, coaching, consulting services. Next thing is you can do is write a book. So I was advertising my books. That's more of a passive way. Courses, that's another passive way. You can do an online community, group webinars, group coaching. So these are the types of things. The other fastest way to monetize is through affiliate programs and products. So, Amazon, I got a lot of book recommendations from the audience and the guests that I could put in the show notes. And so basically affiliate works is if somebody makes a purchase, you get a certain percentage of it. So those are kind of the quick and easy way. And then as the podcast or whatever your medium or brand grows, you can start thinking about advertising and sponsorships and high ticket offers.
I love that trajectory because you didn't start with sponsorships, and that's the first place everybody goes. And
Yeah.
that's a tough deal, not just to find the sponsors, maintain the sponsors, and to prove to the sponsors that their money is worth spending. So
Yeah.
you laid out a bunch of other really great ways that people can make money from a podcast. That's awesome. So you
Yeah.
mentioned a few times about how you shared that you could help people and you do consulting. So who do you work with and what do you offer?
Yeah, so I work with now high income earners. I work with doctors, lawyers, dentists looking to achieve time freedom from their traditional job. So it could either be through stock investing, could be real estate, could be building a brand, writing books, coaching, courses, speaking. So I work with doctors and clients who are seeking to achieve additional sources of income apart from their traditional job. And more recently, a lot of doctors have branched into this area where they want to learn how to sell high ticket coaching and offers and courses to their community. So I show one of my signature is I teach doctors how to make 5 to 10K in a single weekend with around 3 hours of work through webinars.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Now, I'll put it in the show notes, but just share quickly, how do we find you?
Easiest way, go to Dr. Chris Liu, MD, PhD.com. And my last name is LOO. And just enter in your details and your information, and we'll get back to you.
All right, cool. And I'll definitely put that in the show notes. And I listen to a lot. So first thing I love about your podcast is that it's short. So I don't have to choose like, is it this 3 hour podcast or you? I can listen to you and the 3 hour podcast. I love that. And you bring on the most interesting people. So I don't even know where you find all these people, but we met at Podfest this past year and I was in the audience and Dr. Lou was speaking. And so it seems like you pull people from all walks of life that just have a good story to tell. Is that how you find your guests?
Yeah, I mean, we get we get a lot of inbound from booking agents looking to make appearances on the podcast. Also from guest appearances at events, Podfest, and we also get a lot of inbound leads from LinkedIn as well.
Mm.
So, and basically, the purpose of the podcast is to share inspiring stories of entrepreneurs, business owners who have achieved either financial independence, financial freedom, that have built a business around new, innovative, exciting trends. I know yours is the cash pay medical practices. We get a lot of guests in the AI tech, so entrepreneurs, founders, and it's really to just share, and inspire, and give brand visibility to the guests.
Cool. Well, I'll put a link to the podcast as well. It's been so much fun talking to you. Before we go, I have this tradition. I stole this concept from another podcaster. Diary of a CEO is my favorite podcast out there. Steve Bartlett. I mention him every episode in hopes that one day he will find me and he will want to talk to me. But anyway, what he does is he asks the guest a question from the past guest, but that person does not know who the question is being asked to. So I have a question for you from my last guest. And that question is, if you could talk to your future version of yourself, what would you tell yourself not to wait on doing and why?
Well, that's a great question. I would, if I were talking to my future self, I would say, do not wait to get started on your dreams. And I know because I do a lot of goal setting and journaling every day, and some of these goals that I want to make and create, my brain just goes, it freezes up because it's just so like, it's just like, how would that happen? And just, oh, that could never happen. So really just get started, just one step at a time. And I use this new technique that I learned is, when the time is tough, especially the last 6 years, it's been really tough when, just the economy and just geopolitically everything. So I just use this thing where it's like, just either you take it, they'd say take it day by day. Sometimes I break it down to seconds. And then if I make it through this second, then it's a win, or just like find that emotional, that mental, that spiritual leverage to what's to make it to the next to let and just take tiny steps, and just and you have to execute. And even, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, I've seen podcasts like Steve Bartlett's, and I mean, it's like, how could they're like millions of followers, and then I'm 6 years in, and I'm like, I could never do that. But it's like, you learn and you grow and you change and you evolve. So just get started and take that first step. That would be what I would say.
I feel confident you're gonna get there. Absolutely. When you said that, I'm a runner, and so I run
Yeah.
marathons, and sometimes the pain is just too much. And I think about I've got 5 miles left. And so instead, I just think, run to that tree. Okay. Run to that, next tree, run to that light. And when you may give yourself smaller goals versus these big, giant, overwhelming ones, it really does kind of create context and you will likely get there. So thank you for that
Yeah.
advice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'm a fellow runner too, and it's like, and I really enjoy the journey. And when you look back, it's like, you look back and you're like, you're here and you're like, oh, I was struggling, or so painful. But then when you look at how far you've come, it's like, you actually amaze yourself.
Absolutely. And I bet the same thing happens to your bank account. Right? When you start making those incremental changes.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Lou, thank you so much for your time today. This has been absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to get this out to everybody. And I'll have the references you referred to, the link to work with you, and a link to your podcast all in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're driving, get to where you're going, and then you can go look at it. All
Excellent.
right.
Well,
Thank
thanks so
you.
much.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Hormones, the business of wellness. I hope that you're walking away with fresh ideas and real strategies you can use to grow your practice with profit and purpose. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if something you heard today resonated with you, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend or a colleague. It's one of the best ways you can support the show, and it might be exactly what they need to hear right now. If you want even more tools and support, go ahead and head over to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. Until next time, keep doing the work that matters. Your patients need you, and I am cheering you along every step of the way.